fact, a group of section of people in South Africa at the time, particularly in Johannesburg, because Barney was based in Johannesburg, were, elbowing each other out of the way and falling over themselves to work with Barney. I'm sure there were as many who wanted nothing to do with Barney because they saw it all as mumbo jumbo and, nonsense. But I certainly was of the former crowd. So yes, definitely Barney himself. So it wasn't because I had a history of the market theatre. It really was the politics, and it was the fact that he was telling South African stories, and that he was dealing with race, and he was dealing with apartheid, and he was dealing with... that's what it was. I suppose politics and the place, and it had also a place at Johannesburg that was alternative. The flea market was there. It was like a place where people hung out. So it was also a place like, somewhere where I felt at home and somewhere where I felt I belonged. In the process of working with him. So the workshop play that I did with him was Score Me the Ages, which was initiated by Matthew, about Joburg Red Boys. And the process started with just talking before Barney even committed, before there was, okay, we're doing it, we've got 6 weeks and we're doing it such and such a date. Meeting at Matthew's house, smoking a lot of dope, and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, and which was, for in terms of Barney's process and how he named it, was gossip. So it was really just talking around and about and into and out of and anything that the themes, the subject, the possibilities, personal experiences, etc. And Barney he didn't tell you a lot about himself, but he was very curious about everyone else, which was part of his gift, no doubt, big part of his personality. So it was sharing personal stuff. It was quite confrontational. But just talking about and around. And then there came a point where there was definitely going to be a production. That then shifted, and there was quite a break in that because so then once it became production, then it was more formalized. So then we were sent out to do research, to kind of hang around the streets, try and find people to talk to, observe characters, come back with anecdotes or snatches of conversation, and he was quite prescriptive in how to do that. So he would, for instance, tell you, write it down as soon as you can. So you don't sit there with a pen and paper telling the person, actually, I'm doing research. But, so you ask somebody the time and try and get a conversation going, and if not, just try and feel, pick something up from that person and write it down as soon as possible, and then everyone would come back and communally share, as a group, share what people we'd met and phrases we'd picked up, or little stories that we'd picked up, that kind of thing. And from there it moved on to one-on-one sessions with Barney, where he'd get more intense about the kind of character that he thought you might be good at playing. So with me, he he said to me, wouldn't you like to play a working class person? Which did appeal to me. And a friend of Matthew's, who was, I don't know if she was a doctor or still an intern at the time, anyway, she got me into the Joburg Gen, the Charlotte McTavier, as somebody who was interested in getting a job as a porter. So I went with a reason for being there, and semi in costume and semi in a character already, and spent the day being shown around by these porters, the kind of work that they do. So that became then a sort of more intensive time of research and character research. And what happened in that time is that somebody that I didn't speak to, there was just something that I picked up that I based the character on, that I ended up creating. So, yeah, I mean, his process was, he had a great facility for like giving people a freedom to go, and if you were open to it, because I know actors that struggled with it. I'm sure maybe you would speak to some, or who were terrified of it, wouldn't do it. But if you were open to it, there was, certainly my experience of it was that he kind of facilitated this experience that was wonderful and very creative, in quite a simple way, actually.
Just go back.
He certainly played is maybe the wrong word, he certainly used, part of his technique was the fact that he knew that people wanted to work with him. So therefore they would spill. And those that wouldn't spill, he would work with, but I think that they then didn't get the full, well, they had a different experience of working with him. So I think that was kind of the contract. If you want to, there probably would have been people that he would not wanted to work with, I'm sure, that he knew would just be not suitable. But certainly, that was, I can't interpret it further than that, but that's why people opened up to him, I think, because you were attracted to the way he worked and you wanted to do that.
With less experience?
Well, the Market Theatre Lab he started more complex than this, but a big part of it was a growing criticism that he drew stories from, he and a group of white South African theatre makers at the time, drew stories from people who lived in, black people. And the Market Theatre, and that there was growing criticism of that, as I understand it and as I remember it. And the lab was to bridge that, so that people from community theatre were brought into contact with the Market Theatre being mainstream theatre. And that there was a skills sharing, which was very much part of an ethos of the times, of, if you'd had the privilege of an education, then sharing the skills that you had with people who didn't. We South Africans are so shaped by the politics, and certainly from the 80s, 70s, from 76 on, I'd say more and more and more and more. And now it's a different shaping. But, we are such an intensely political society and dealing with stuff all the time. So there was the market, and then there was PACT, which was apartheid government funding nationalist culture, high culture in their terms, in opera, ballet, etc., etc. European, very reverent of old European culture. Not to say that there weren't good people working there, etc. And some of them crossed over and worked at the market as well. And then there was, the other big theatre was Peter Turin, and that really was, was like bad copies of No Sex, Please We're British. And better West End, sort of current hits and bad farce, really bad British farce. And another school of acting that was also part of the attraction of the market, that it was supposedly, not supposedly, because it was also, in fact it was, not, sort of actors corpsing each other on stage and doing acting tricks and that kind of, like really, more English than the English kind of thing, more colonial than the motherland sort of nonsense.